I love you. 3 words that you never thought you would hear from anyone in Pokemon, but 3 words that were said in the greatest iteration of the Gen 3 story, Pokemon Adventures Ruby and Sapphire. A story that's not just Pokemon's greatest canon love story, but a story that you've seen beyond anything that you've seen in the anime or the games, as it's filled with emotion, despair, hope, and so much more. So if you haven't read the manga yet, this is a major spoiler warning, and a warning to be prepared to be blown away by a story so good, it puts almost every other story in Pokemon, along with its characters, to shame. And before anyone says anything about me shipping 10-year-olds, I'm not. This is the message from the author from the first volume, so you're welcome, it's canon. Let's start off by going over our 2 protagonists. Unlike previous Adventures arcs, Adventures Ruby and Sapphire start off by building up our male and female protagonists, Ruby and Sapphire, in parallel, and the story follows both of them at the same time. However, unlike the previous male protagonists who led the stories prior, Ruby isn't anything like Red or Gold. Red and Gold were typical outgoing, brave, and kind heroes that you would expect to see in any Pokemon title or shonen anime, like Ash basically. Ruby isn't anything like this at all. Ruby is incredibly selfish, arrogant, posh, cares heavily about appearances, snarky, annoying, and incredibly fussy. And that's not the main thing that sets him apart from the previous protagonists. The main thing that sets him apart from the previous 2 was the same thing that made me hesitant on reading this manga as a kid. Ruby's goal is not to defeat the gym leaders and become the very best. It's to win every single Pokemon contest in Hoenn. Yep, his dream is to become a master coordinator. And I know many of you may be in my position of wondering how having protagonists aspiring to win contests can be any fun to read, but you gotta trust me on this one. It'll get really good later on. Sapphire, on the other hand, is unlike the previous female protagonists and is the complete opposite of Ruby. This might be the outfit you see her in throughout the manga, but when you first see her, she's dressed like this. Sapphire is wild, adventurous, tomboyish, intuitive, incredibly athletic, and loves to battle, and the gym leader challenge in this manga is taken up by her. So starting things off, we have a more feminine male protagonist who's into contests, beauty, and enhancing one's looks with man-made products, while the other is into gym challenges, battles, and keeping everything in its natural wild state. Sound familiar to anything? With introductions out of the way, let's get on to the main story. Our story begins with Ruby moving into Littleroot Town from Johto on his birthday, with Norman eagerly awaiting his family's arrival in Hoenn, but Ruby has other plans. Fearing that his father will push him into rigorous training and disapprove of his dream to win all contests in Hoenn, Ruby runs away immediately. While escaping, Ruby encounters Professor Birch being attacked by Mightyena. Ruby tries to help, but his Pokemon are trained for style, not battle. He manages to scare the Mightyena off, but it leads him off a cliff. He's saved by what he thinks is a wild Pokemon, but it turns out to be Sapphire. Startled, Ruby attacks her, leading into a misunderstanding. Ruby, thinking he's under attack, contacts Birch, who instructs him to use Mudkip from his bag. However, Ruby's disgusted by Mudkip's appearance, which says a lot about him, even saying ew to him, but anyways, the guy prefers not to battle at all. Meanwhile, Sapphire aggressively fights back and gets frustrated by Ruby's hesitation. Eventually, Birch realizes that Ruby is fighting Sapphire and clears up the confusion. Birch also recognizes Ruby as Norman's son, but doesn't mention anything about their shared past, which, I mean, you'll see why this would have been incredibly useful later. Just as the misunderstanding clears up, they're attacked by a wild Viper. Sapphire explains that she's helping her father with Pokemon research, hence a remote secret base, and kind of explains why she's dressed the way she is. She asks for Ruby's help, and you would think in a situation like this, the guy would help, but no. He refuses, worrying that battling would ruin his Pokemon for contests. What a freaking guy, eh? Sapphire handles the Viper herself and expresses her dislike for Pokemon that can't battle, emphasizing her belief in keeping things natural, in contrast to Ruby's focus on enhancing Pokemon through artificial methods. In frustration, Sapphire proposes an 80-day bet. She'll defeat all 8 gym leaders, while Ruby will have to win all 20 contests, with the winner meeting at her secret base in 80 days. Ruby agrees to the bet, but Sapphire suddenly faints. Ruby realizes she protected him from the Mightyena's attack earlier and tends to her. While she's unconscious, the Viper returns, and Ruby swiftly defeats it and heads out to pursue his 80-day challenge. So clearly, Ruby isn't actually against battling, because he just did it and presumably got his Pokemon a bit dirty, but he didn't want to battle in front of Sapphire. It's interesting. As Sapphire wakes up, she realizes she's all healed thanks to Ruby, and even better than that, Ruby left her a very Ruby-like letter, telling her that he altered his clothes for her to wear and that they look great on her. How sweet. Except she's totally embarrassed because he definitely took her measurements while she was asleep. Well, anywho, Sapphire regains her composure and sets off on her challenge as well. The two go their separate ways and only meet here and there, and throughout this challenge, I want you guys to know, Sapphire was straight up destroying Ruby. She literally obtained 4 gym badges before he could win any contests. Now, that was primarily because the normal rank contests come up so late in the Hoenn region, but regardless, she was crushing him. But the real problem progress that happens in between here isn't in their actual challenges, it's in their growth as characters throughout the challenge. If I haven't made it any more clear by now, the dual protagonists work perfectly because not only do they parallel each other, but they also parallel Team Magma and Team Aqua. Team Magma and Team Aqua are of course present here in the manga, and it's Ruby that has to primarily deal with Team Magma, and Sapphire who has to primarily deal with Team Aqua. This is interesting because Team Aqua of course is all about taking the world into a more natural state for Pokemon, and Team Magma is all about enhancing the world and its land for humans, which Ruby and Sapphire exemplify in their own characters in a smaller way. So in a way, it's like they're going up against their own characteristics and values throughout the series. Other things to mention is that Ruby in particular is shown to battle when no one else is around to see him. His battling skills are on par with Sapphire's, but why he's hiding it, we don't know yet. He also does help people when he can, but to not hurt others, he sometimes helps them by pushing them away, and that actually ends up hurting them in the process. Yeah, his character is a lot more complex. Sapphire, on the other hand, almost seems like a perfect character in the first half of the manga, succeeding in almost everything she does and even having superhuman feats. She even held her breath for friggin' 4 minutes while saving Flannery and battling. Her development in the story comes more so from accepting Ruby and the growth of her feelings towards him, because as early as Dewford Town, she's embarrassed and denying the fact that she likes him and all. Her development is in becoming more vulnerable in her own way. So you have a feminine male protagonist who's becoming a bit more masculine, and a masculine female protagonist who's becoming a bit more feminine, like two opposites coming together in harmony. Throughout their time together, it's clear that the two really care for each other, and while it's shown that they can't stand one another, through and through, they're always looking out for each other, and when they work together, they work really well as a team. The second half of the story revolves around the events of Groudon Kyogre. Yeah, the two legends fought for the entirety of the latter half of the series, and boy was it reckless. In this, all the gym leaders teamed up to fight Groudon Kyogre and save the Hoenn region, and they called upon Sapphire to help as well, because Winona is their master and Winona is the greatest, and Winona went, yeah, we need Sapphire, and boom. Gym leader tier already, baby, she's crazy. It's here that Sapphire runs into Ruby and actually softens up around him. She starts to be nice to him, and it even looks like she's gonna confess at some point, but the Legends Earthquake causes them to get attacked by a dozen wild Grumpig, and Ruby instinctively attacks and subsides all of them in order to protect him and Sapphire. Sapphire realizes his strength and gets upset at him for hiding his battling prowess this entire time, and asks him to help in the fight to save Hoenn. And of course, Ruby says no. He wants to continue doing contests even during the crisis, and once he's done, he wants to head back to the Johto region, and that he basically says that he doesn't care about Hoenn. Sapphire is outraged and heartbroken, because while Ruby doesn't know it yet, Sapphire doesn't want Ruby to leave Hoenn. She really has grown to love him, and of course she's appalled by how selfish Ruby can be, with everyone's lives at stake as well. So in her fury, she abandons the clothes that Ruby got her. Now you may think that Ruby was just saying all this for show, but no, he actually meant it. Yeah, he's sad and all because he knows he's hurt and disappointed Sapphire, but he goes on to do the contest anyways, in the middle of the region falling apart. Now, I can't go into all the details here, but eventually his Master Wallace and one of Ruby's own Pokemon come in and teach Ruby a lesson that he'll never forget about how selfish she's been and how he's hurt the people around him. And this gets Ruby to stand back up and actually protect the things that he cares for. His Pokemon, all the people he's met, the Hoenn region, and of course, Sapphire. He learns to accept the battling side of his character and moves forward to stop Groudon and Kyogre, and upon seeing her again, he even makes her a new set of clothes for both him and her, and Sapphire slowly starts to warm up to him again. Ruby and Sapphire team up to fight Archie and Maxie, who, consumed by the red and blue orbs, have lost their humanity. While it's hard to say if Ruby and Sapphire truly won, they accomplished their goal of stopping the two. After an explosive finish, the orbs leave Archie and Maxie, entering Ruby and Sapphire's bodies. Luckily, they land on Mirage Island to train their bodies and minds for a quick training arc, balancing their weaknesses and strengths to control the orbs. Archie and Maxie personify the path that Ruby and Sapphire could have taken had they stuck with their extreme ideals, representing how their extreme differences drove them apart, and how with their extremes, they're always in conflict with the rest of the world. Ruby and Sapphire avoid this fate by finding balance within themselves and with each other. I feel as though the path they were heading towards was the same path of Archie and Maxie, like literally they were fighting the worst version of themselves, and I think it's because of their similarities that the red and blue orb chose them. But of course, like I said, with the balance came the control over the orbs, allowing them to retain their humanity and take a better path. Groudon and Kyogre are still going on the rampage, and right before Ruby and Sapphire are about to confront them, Sapphire says that she has something that she needs to say to Ruby, and tells him that she loves him. Well, if you're reading the stupid Viz Media translation, she actually tells him that she has a crush on him, but that's dumb, and the actual translation nails it down to I love you. Ruby is shocked, and Sapphire apologizes, saying that she only said it now because she doesn't know when she'll get a chance to say it ever again. Not only because they might not make it out alive, but because Ruby said he'd head back to Johto. It's here that we learn about the backstories of the two characters. Sapphire reflects on having feelings for someone else as well ever since she was a kid. A friend that she met when her father was visiting one of his friends who happened to have a son around her age. This friend of hers from way back when that she only spent a little time with was one that she forgot the name of and face of due to how long it's been, but this was the person that she had the best time of her life with. On top of this, she mentions that the same friend had protected her from being attacked by salamence way back when. Ruby is shocked to hear this because he realizes that she of course is referring to him, and that he also has had feelings for her this entire time without realizing that she was his childhood friend. Ruby and Sapphire were childhood lovers from the early days. Sapphire was a timid girly girl and Ruby was everything you'd expect from a guy. One day as they were playing, a salamence attacked them and Ruby did everything he could to protect Sapphire. In that, Sapphire didn't see salamence as the monster, but Ruby as the monster. Ruby had realized that his battle-hungry nature scared her friend that he was trying to protect, and Sapphire realized that her weakness caused her to hurt a friend who was only trying to protect her. And so, Ruby vowed that he would pursue beauty over power, and Sapphire vowed that she would pursue power over beauty. They essentially became each other, but denied a huge part of themselves in the process, and in accepting one another, they slowly began to accept themselves as well. Ruby, not wanting the love of his life to get hurt, pushes Sapphire off of Atropius to fight Groudon Kyogre himself. Well, him and side chick Courtney go together, but he's doing it for Sapphire. Eventually, at the cost of lives, Ruby does stop Groudon Kyogre, but Archie and Maxie return, and of course, Sapphire finds a way to return to him and save him, and the two fight Archie and Maxie together for one final fight, which in my eyes was the final piece needed to show that the two had truly grown, as this time, they successfully beat Archie and Maxie without fail. And how could I forget? As the series ends and the 80-day bet comes to a close, we find out that the reason why Sapphire created the 80-day bet in the first place was because 80 days from the day she met Ruby was her birthday, and if you remember, the bet started off on Ruby's birthday. Adventures Ruby and Sapphire, everyone. Even crazier is if you look at the gemstone for July and September respectively, you'll see that the actual gemstones for the two are Ruby and Sapphire. It's nuts how they tied everything in together. I never even went over the fact as to how Wallace is Ruby's master and Winona is Sapphire's master, and Winona and Wallace in this series have a history together. Ruby and Sapphire have so many parallels, so many connections, and so many things that just make their story so incredible for the likes of Pokemon. While I do wish they had more time together, the story about opposites coming together in harmony with each other is a classic tale, and their character growth as friends, as a couple, and as individuals are some of the best in the entirety of Pokemon, and this love story just has to be Pokemon's best without fail. I know I kinda went over the entirety of the relationship here in this video, but trust me, if you were to pick up and read the manga, even knowing all of this, you will thoroughly enjoy the series and these characters. I didn't tell you what happens afterwards now, did I? How Ruby takes the confession and what happens to them afterwards. Well, I guess you guys can read for yourselves to find out, or we do have the Emerald and Aura as chapters to cover, so maybe I'll touch upon them again some other time. But for now, we got a lot more to cover on the Ruby and Sapphire chapters themselves.